Welcome back, everyone. I'm really glad you're here again with me today. Last week, we talked about abundance and scarcity, not as a measure of how much we have, but as a way of connecting to what's already around us. We talked about how abundance isn't excess, it's access to possibility and connection and solutions. And scarcity isn't necessarily a lack of resources, it's the feeling that there isn't enough. Not enough time, not enough patience, not enough energy, cooperation, support, whatever it might be. And when we live from that place of scarcity, our world starts to shrink. We become more reactive, more controlling, more overwhelmed. We stop seeing possibilities because we're focused on problems. That conversation really is the foundation of what I want to talk to you about this week. This was where I initially wanted to go, but I felt really strongly that I needed to lay that groundwork because it's all very deeply connected. So today we're talking about peace and how to cultivate peace in our homes. And I think that sometimes we think of peace or the feeling of peace as a feeling that comes when certain things are absent. Like my home feels peaceful when there's no messes or there's no yelling or no conflict. But what if peace isn't actually the absence of something? What if it's actually the presence of something? What if peace isn't created by eliminating the noise and the mess, the conflict, or the chaos that exists in all of our lives, but instead is something that we cultivate through intention and safety and meaning? Because if abundance is access, then peace is one of those things that abundance gives us access to. And that matters because a lot of parents are caught in a loop of waiting for peace to happen later. Like when the kids are in bed at the end of the day, they'll finally feel some peace and quiet. Or maybe when they're older or in a different phase, or when the house is cleaner, when everyone's getting along better, when things feel less complicated. But real life doesn't work that way. Real life is noisy and emotional and unpredictable. And, right, there's that and we talked about and our homes can still feel peaceful. Not because they're clean and quiet and organized, but because we're creating a peaceful family culture. Not by removing everything that's difficult, but by intentionally building those conditions that allow for peace to exist alongside and within real life. So let's spend just a minute talking about what peace actually is. Because a lot of us have inherited an idea of peace that doesn't necessarily work very well in family life because we define peace, like I said before, as what is absent, the absence of conflict or stress or noise or mess. But if that's our definition, then peace becomes incredibly fragile because all it takes is one sibling argument or one missed deadline, one meltdown in the grocery store, or one unexpected expense, one bad day. And suddenly our sense of peace is gone. And that's not really how I think peace works. I think it's much more resilient and accessible than that. It's something that can exist alongside the realities of family life because families are living systems. They're constantly moving and growing and changing and adapting. There's always going to be dishes in the sink. Someone's always going to need something. There's always going to be misunderstandings and hurt feelings and disagreements in times when everyone in the house is tired or running on empty. Those things aren't evidence that peace is missing. They're just evidence that people live together, right? The question isn't whether those things are going to happen. It's just about what surrounds them when they do. Is conflict happening inside a culture of safety? Are mistakes being made within a culture of grace? Do big emotions happen inside a culture of connection? Because that's where peace is. Not in the absence of real life, but it's the presence of something that's strong enough to hold all of that. Do you ever see families who look peaceful from the outside? There's a few of them that I know that are, to me, are kind of intimidating. Sometimes I think they probably are really peaceful, but sometimes I wonder if they're just really quiet. And those things aren't necessarily the same thing. A home can be very quiet and still be full of tension. A home can be very orderly and still feel emotionally unsafe. A home can have well behaved children who are carrying anxiety or resentment, fear, loneliness. Peace isn't a performance. It's not what people see from the outside. It's what people experience when they live there. It's the feeling that they belong, that they're safe, that they matter. The feeling that even when hard things happen, The family knows how to move through those things together. And when we start defining peace that way, it feels quite different because now peace is no longer something that we're waiting for, it's something that we're actively building. It's in our conversations and our routines, our responses. This is where peace stops being a destination and becomes a culture. But something gets in the way sometimes and holds us back. Because a lot of parents, most parents, I would say, don't wake up in the morning and just think, you know what, today is the day I want to feel tense and disconnected. That's never what we're aiming for, is it? But I think sometimes it's where we end up. And often it's because we've slipped into scarcity without realizing it. Now, scarcity has a way of changing how we experience everything that's happening around us. When we're living in abundance, we have access to possibilities and we can see options and flexibility. We can choose how to respond instead of just reacting by default. But when we're living in scarcity, that focus narrows and everything starts to feel urgent and very high stakes. The mess in the living room isn't just a mess anymore. It's evidence that nobody listens. The sibling argument isn't just a disagreement, it's proof that your kids don't like each other. A forgotten chore becomes disrespect. A bad attitude becomes a character flaw. Do you see how this plays out in our lives all the time? Scarcity takes a single moment and turns it into a story. And usually it's not a very kind story because scarcity is rooted in fear. And when we start believing those stories, we naturally move into this protection mode. We become more controlling, more rigid, more reactive. We tighten our grip because we're afraid that everything will fall apart around us if we don't. And the irony there is that the harder we grip and hold on to it, the less peaceful things often feel. Because peace cannot grow in an environment where everyone is trying to control everyone else. Peace needs space to expand and fill. The foundation of peace isn't just one thing, it's not just one practice. A peaceful family culture isn't built by routines alone, or traditions alone, or communication skills alone. It's the culture that those practices create. So let's first recognize that every family has a culture, whether we create it intentionally or not. It's the atmosphere of the home. It's the way we do things, the way we relate to one another. It's the set of values that we live by, whether they're spoken or not. And that culture can either reinforce scarcity or it can cultivate abundance. A scarcity based family culture feels tense. In this atmosphere, everyone is bracing for the next problem. People become focused on avoiding trouble rather than building connection. An abundance based family culture feels different, not because life is easier, the same things are going on for all of us, but because there's a deep belief that the family can handle whatever comes together. There's room for mistakes and for growth. And when that kind of abundance exists, peace becomes possible. So, if peace is something we cultivate through the presence of certain conditions, what are those conditions? Where does peace actually come from? It's not about asking, how do I get rid of everything that's disrupting my peace? Remember, that's the voice of scarcity. Really, it's asking, how do I create more of the things that cultivate peace? Now, I have noticed that peace in my home tends to grow in a handful of places. And I like to think of these as the pillars of a peaceful family culture. They're the places where abundance becomes visible, the places where connection and safety and belonging and meaning take root in everyday family life. Now, I want you to hear these not as a checklist of things you're supposed to be doing. And they're definitely not just another opportunity to find what's wrong with your family or make more work for yourself. Instead, think of these as places to look for abundance, places where peace may already exist in your home, and places where you might want to be a little more intentional. Okay? The first is peace in order. Now, when I talk about order, I'm not just talking about organization, like color coded calendars or labeled bins, although I'm a big fan of all of that. Order is really about predictability. It's comfort and security in knowing what's coming next. As human beings, we thrive when life feels predictable. We feel safer when we know what to expect. and children are no different. That is why order can be so powerful. Not because there's a system for everything, but because predictability eases uncertainty. And every family's version of order is going to look different. For some families, it's a detailed schedule. For others, it's just a few simple rhythms that anchor you in your day. The goal isn't control, it's just creating enough structure that everyone can relax a little bit because peace is found when people feel safe in those everyday rhythms of family life. The second is peace in quality time. There is a special kind of peace that comes from just being together, not performing, not teaching, not correcting, just sharing space. Some of the most meaningful moments are often the most ordinary. Eating dinner together, going for a walk, watching a movie, running errands, just having conversations about your day. Sometimes we think connection has to be created through big experiences, but peace is usually found in those much smaller moments. So don't worry so much about whether every interaction is meaningful or every memory is magical. Instead, just find those moments of peace in your togetherness. The third is peace in traditions and rituals. Traditions and rituals create meaning. They give families something to look forward to, something to remember, and something to hold on to during big seasons of change. Some traditions that we have are tied to holidays or birthdays or other occasions, and others are much smaller and happen every day. Maybe it's the way you celebrate the first day of school or a certain meal you have on Friday nights, or maybe it's bedtime stories or family prayer, pancakes on Sunday morning, or the way you greet each other when someone walks through the door. What matters isn't how elaborate the tradition is, it's that it creates a sense of connection and identity. These rituals become emotional anchors. They remind us who we are and what we value and what it feels like to belong. The fourth is peace in communication. Peace grows when people feel heard. Now, that doesn't mean everyone agrees. It doesn't mean there's never conflict or disagreement. It simply means that people have space to share their thoughts and feelings and ask questions and offer perspective. So, talk with your kids often. Get curious about their experiences, ask them questions, listen to them more than you lecture. And when it's possible and appropriate based on their age, give them context. Help them understand the why behind the decisions and rules and boundaries that you set. A peaceful family culture isn't built on compliance, it's built on trust. And when children know their voice matters, they're much more likely to use it. And when families learn how to talk openly and respectfully with one another, peace becomes something that they create together. I worked with a mom once that kept saying in our sessions that she just wanted the kind of relationship with her kids where they would talk to her when they became teenagers. And at one point I asked her, "Well, do you talk to them now?" And she realized she wasn't cultivating that kind of communication. And it starts so early. So if you want your kids to talk to you later, talk to them now. Learn early to communicate in a way that brings peace, the sense that what they say matters and that there's safety even in disagreement. The fifth one, and I love this one, is peace in play. Play brings a different kind of peace into a home. Not the quiet kind, of course. This is the kind that comes through laughter and silliness and creativity and joy. Play reminds us that not everything has to be productive all the time. Not every moment needs to be a lesson. Sometimes the most meaningful thing we can do is just to enjoy each other. Play evolves as your kids grow. What used to be board games and tea parties becomes inside jokes and sending TikToks back and forth. It's not what you do that matters. The goal isn't to entertain your children, it's to create those moments of lightness and joy that strengthen your connection. The sixth is peace in work. Just like there's peace in fun, there's also peace in working together. Not because chores are always fun, but because shared responsibility creates a sense of purpose and contribution. Every family has work to do. When we invite our children to participate, we're doing more than just getting help. We're teaching them that they're an important part of our family, that their contribution matters, that we all work together to create the kind of home that we want to live in. Whether the goal is a clean kitchen or a yard without weeds in it or just getting out the door on time, peace can grow when we're all working together. The seventh is peace in regulation. Underneath all of these things is something even more foundational, and that's regulation. Because a peaceful family isn't a family without big emotions. It's a family where big emotions are safe to have. People get frustrated, they get disappointed, overwhelmed, anxious, angry. All of that is normal and expected. Peace isn't created by eliminating those experiences, it's created by learning how to move through them without losing connection. But when we do lose connection, we can find peace in repair. That's number 8. Every family experiences conflict. People misunderstand each other and get each other's feelings hurt. Patience runs thin. Someone says things they wish that they hadn't said. It's not if it's going to happen, it's just when, right? The difference is what happens next. Peaceful families know how to repair. They apologize, they reconnect, they have those hard conversations. Remember, peace doesn't exist only in the absence of conflict, it happens right in the middle of it, and especially in what happens after. Now, the last one, number 9, is peace in belonging. At its core, peace is the feeling that you belong, that you are loved and valued and accepted, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. Every family member brings something different to the table, different personalities, strengths, struggles, different ways of thinking and feeling and moving through the world. A peaceful family culture makes room for all of these differences. It doesn't require everyone to be the same, and it doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't make belonging conditional on performance. Instead, it sends a consistent message that there is a place for you here, not just in our home, but in me. You belong here, in me, and to me, and with me. I don't know about you, but that feels to me like the ultimate expression of peace, knowing who I am and that I belong with my family, my husband, and my kids. So, those are the 9 pillars of peace, those areas you can anchor to as you cultivate your own peaceful family culture. And I hope that you notice that they're not complicated, they're simple, and we're doing them already because family culture is built in simple things. It's built in the routines that create our stability, in the time we spend together, our conversations, and our laughter, and our work, and our emotions, and how we come back to each other and belong together. And what I love about this definition of peace is that it makes peace so accessible. It's not something that arrives when everything finally falls into place. It's something we experience and live in and nurture all along the way. It is abundant. It's there always. And when we lose access to peace, we can find our way back to it by looking again at these 9 pillars. They're the foundation. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, my home doesn't feel very peaceful right now, I want you to know that peace doesn't require you to change everything. Just start small. Choose one pillar to focus on. The title of this episode is Cultivating a Peaceful Family Culture, and that is so intentional. To cultivate means to prepare, nurture, and intentionally develop something over time so it can thrive. This is not something you stumble upon or create overnight. You're already doing it, and the evidence is all around you. You just have to notice it and add that extra level of intention. Last week, I told you about the Abundant Parenting Challenge. It's a 5-day experience that's designed to help you move out of scarcity and into abundance, not by changing your circumstances, but by changing the way that you see and engage with them. Because that's really what we've been talking about in these last 2 episodes. When we live from scarcity, we focus on what's missing. But when we live from abundance, we begin to recognize what's already present, the peace that's already there, the opportunities that already exist, the ways we're already building something meaningful, even in the middle of our busy, imperfect lives. Each day of the challenge includes a short lesson and a reflection and an exercise to help you cultivate more abundance in your parenting and in your home. And just like we've talked about today, abundance and peace are deeply connected. So if you're ready to dig a little deeper, you can find the link to that Abundant Parenting Challenge in the show notes or visit theparentinglab.org/abundant to join. As always, thank you so much for being here. I will see you all next week, where we'll continue to explore the art and science of parenting and put your parenting to the test. Take care, everyone.